endgame where it's kind of a boring endgame, but it's what we call opposite colored bishops endgame. So notice that my bishop, I'm playing black here, my bishop is on the dark square, my opponent's bishop is on a light square. Now they're ahead by 2 pawns, and in fact this pawn's threatening to come up and check my king. And if one of these pawns gets down to the last rank, they can they can promote it to a queen, and then I'll lose the game. They'll be able to checkmate me. But what I'm going to do here is a little bit unusual. I'm going to allow them to check me. And my idea is if they push the pawn, I'll take it with my bishop. If they take my bishop back, my king will take. And with one bishop and a king, you cannot get checkmate. That would be a draw. So here I built what we call a fortress. I'm just going to move my bishop back and forth because I want to get rid of these 2 pawns. If he pushes this one pawn, then my bishop can come to the f6 square, and I'll just move it up and down the diagonal. And since he has a light squared bishop and I have a dark squared bishop, there's nothing he can do to stop me. So essentially, I'm just waiting for him to push that pawn. I'll sacrifice my bishop. He'll take it back with the pawn. My king will take the pawn, and it will be a draw. So in a little bit, the computer will recognize that it's a draw after we've repeated several moves. Now, where I could go wrong is if I move my bishop away. But what I'm doing is I'm staying here so that either he pushes the pawn to the light square, and then I can bring my bishop onto f6 and just travel along the diagonal. He'll never be able to make progress. Or if he pushes the pawn, I can give the bishop up, pawn takes, king takes, and again, with just the bishop, he can't win. Remember, the pawns can queen, the bishop can't. So again, it's kind of boring here, but this is going to hold a draw, and this is because the bishops are on opposite colors. If he had a dark squared bishop, then he could check me and then try to trade off the bishops. But here he can't do anything, and then shortly the computer will realize it's a draw. Again, if you're just joining us, you can type in the chat. Leo just said hello. We got Jason in there. Okay, so please type in the chat if you haven't already. Again, computer will draw this in a little bit. It'll realize there's nothing to do, even though it's ahead 2 pawns. It's gonna seem forever, but there's nothing that it can do here. Notice if the king runs away, then the bishop will be able to take that pawn for free. The king is staying protecting it. And notice he's going to try all these moves, and nothing he can do can stop me. Okay, and I can't go wrong unless I bring the bishop off of this diagonal. Okay, it's what we call a fortress. Now, after repeating the same exact position 3 times, it'll be a draw. Okay. Computer's taking forever though. It's trying not to avoid that. It's trying to avoid the 3-move repetition, but it can't. Eventually it will realize, okay, now I'm going to take the pawn, and now I'm going to take this pawn, and this is a draw because he can't win with just the bishop. Okay, so that's our first lesson. It's what we call opposite color bishops. Just to recap, if you're joining us late here, in this position, it looks really bad. The side playing black is down 2 pawns, but because these bishops are on opposite colors, I can set up a blockade by bringing my bishop to this square, e7. Oops, it's not letting me do that. Okay, and then the idea is if it ever pushes the pawn, I can give it up to get the 2 pawns, and with a king and 1 bishop, nothing can be done. It's a draw. All right, so now we're going to move